Vipers have an opportunity to go the entire season unbeaten. And eventually, if they do, will be very controversial. Because remember, they've lost a game in the boardroom to Kitara by 3 goals. And they squandered 3 points. Invisible -1, you could say. Because it's a team that has gone the entire season unbeaten in Uganda before, Villa, in 1982.
Lewis Hamilton, he had a podium finish with Formula One, though he was third. But he also won an Oscar at the Oscars for the movie. He's part executive producer.
The acting that we know Hamilton for is in that red car with a ranching horse. Of course, we've known him before that with the Silver Arrow, the Mercedes. Kimi Antonelli winning for the very first time.
A great weekend to be a teenager.
Yeah.
He's 19?
He's 19, yeah. And considering there's Max Dorman.
Yeah, who 16 and 74 days.
Yeah, who can move a mountain. You see how Arsenal fans think.
Are you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Snap Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College, Nabigo Road. GMS Snap Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.
Hello and welcome to Second Take with IDK Isma Dakaba Chigongo. My name is Mebo Kevirunji. Isma, good to see you as always energetic. What do you do to keep your energy levels high, especially now that you're fasting?
First of all, fasting is a gift. If you're Muslim, you have to fast because it's one of the pillars. It's number 4. Shahada, believe in one God, pray 5 times a day, give to the poor. Fasting is number 4. Then if you can afford it, do pilgrimage. Those are the 5. So you must feel blessed and happy that you're able to fast. There are many people who would want to fast, but cannot. So I treat it as a privilege. And that's how I normally look at fasting. But also in terms of energy levels, I've interacted with people who are always happy. I was telling Jeremiah behind the camera last week, one of the people I work with who is very happy is Innocent in Daula. Yeah? I don't know where he finds his happiness, but every time I meet him, okay, he has late nights. His life normally ends at 4 a.m. Yeah? And he's found a way to be happy all the time. Yeah, and if you're involved with sport, surely.
You have to find a way.
You have to find a way. Yeah.
Well, today we are here at the lovely SKA Boutique Bed and Breakfast, a very serene place in the heart of Kampala. They also have a branch in Munyonyo. So here we are, plot 16, Naguru Vale. Do come and check the place out. Isma, let's start by talking Mike Mutebi.
One of the most engrossing and saddening stories that have broken in Uganda over the recent past. Mike Mutebi left home on a Saturday the previous week and went for what is a church event at Chisubi's Seminary Beach. And he has a minder and all these things. Then he disappears. So he's not found until Monday evening. So he disappeared for anywhere close to 48 hours. What actually makes it even more sad is to understand that he was found in a garden in someone's plantation, and in that plantation he did not have a shirt. And you can imagine how a plantation looks like. There are all these holes that they pour manure. Something worse could have happened. So he's taken out of that place and taken to a hospital and eventually taken to Mulago, where he spent a large portion of the previous week in Ward 4B. And it's clear he's not in good health. And for most of us who have interacted with him and know him for a considerable period of time, we've always known Mike Mutebi is not in good health. However, we're a country that murmurs about bad things. Yeah? Country that murmurs about bad things. We've all known Mike Mutebi needs help, but nothing has been done in that period. The diagnosis for many has been that Mike Mutebi suffers from early signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, where his memory is almost washed. He cannot remember most of the things that have happened in his life over the past many years. An illness that many people talk about that happens to people maybe in their 70s and more. So Mike Mutebi is much younger than that. So it's a bit shocking that he's been suffering from that. But I've also learned in the recent past that if you don't keep your mind and brain engaged, you're bound to suffer from something like that. Now, part of the problems that Mike Mutebi has faced are down to the fact that ever since he walked out of that job at KCCA, ever since he lost a job, he's been confined to his home somewhere on Gayaza Road, and he does not have a lot of interaction with the outside world. And actually at the place where he stays, it's largely his mother who stays there with him. So he wakes up and watches TV where he watches wrestling, and one day leads into the next and the next, and there's nothing to look forward to. So his brain is not challenged or engaged. So that's what has made his situation deteriorate. So there's been campaign to support and help him. I've seen some people are trying to do that. But for me, it represents something that we should have a broader debate about. One, I've always thought that there must be a broader debate about social security, and not only in sport, but across Ugandan society, because all of us in our communities know of a civil servant who retired and their health deteriorated because the support system around them, either financial, human, was not there. Then I've always made reference, and if you go to my X, you must have seen it, and I made some of those references in Uganda. One of the things whenever I see these stars or people who are reference points struggle, I always refer to that Joseph Kablet opinion that he wrote back in 2004, The Morning After. That was the title. And by then, Joseph Kablet was writing about how the life of one of Uganda's greatest right backs and coaches, Paul Hasole, deteriorated in the aftermath of losing his last job. He went into a life of drinking, and eventually we lost him that quick. Of course, we are not God who determines when he was supposed to go, but the state that he was in was not very good by the time he passed on. And one of my profound fears, and luckily we have Mike Mutebi alive, so everyone around, I think, football, for which is known, especially KCC and Uganda Cranes where is known, and that would mean KCC and FUFA, we all have to do something, because his state is down to the kind of conditions he's in. And I've learned over the past few days, and this is coming from the horse's mouth, I was having a conversation with Moses Magogo, and I had to bring up Mike Mutebi. I was telling the former president that as a federation, there's something you can do for him. And Moses Magogo told me of a story. I think after Mitchell, before they had Johnny McKinstry as Uganda Cranes coach, he met Mike Mutebi and offered him the Uganda Cranes job. And Mike Mutebi refused to take it. And for whatever reasons, he refused to take it. But that is part of our challenge. How do we keep these people whose lifeblood is sport or football, how do we keep them involved and engaged with the game? Because that will lessen their deterioration. Sometimes when I look at us who do this business, I imagine there is going to come a time when we are no longer the cool ones. They are no longer the ones that people want to watch. They'll be younger, better, who speak the kind of language that the audiences, the majority audiences will prefer to listen to. And maybe it will also be very hard for us, because then the lights will be dimmed. And then you start to think, for the period we've been here, my phone has rung at least 10 times and I've not picked any phone call. Now I can imagine in a case where no one is calling.
No one wants to know your opinion
your opinion on anything, because life has moved on. And that's the most difficult part. When I look at this Mike Mutebi story, and I've seen people want to blame, I've even seen some irresponsible journalism, one who declared him dead. And I thought that was very uncouth. Is that now Mike Mutebi was in a job where we all called for his opinion. And sometimes I've even felt ashamed discussing it, because Mike Mutebi called me many times than I've ever called him in my life. And you always pick the phone call when I was done with radio, television, and called and we had a discussion. Many times I was even compelled to leave work and drive through Lugogo and have a conversation with him about football and then eventually head home. Now, all that is gone. No one calls him about his opinion of the game or to discuss anything. And that can be very, very difficult. I almost want to say to Esabire, cause nafe wetulaga. Yeah, there will be a time when we all need to develop new passions later in life. Yeah, you need to develop something that you feel passionate about, that you want to do, that even when you become older and what you're used to doing for maybe 20, 30 years, you have to be able to unlearn and relearn something else. Because this entire situation involving Mike Mutebi for me is down to that. But hopefully it gets better.
And you said at some point, it's not just in the sporting world, but generally they talk about midlife crisis. You know, you get to a point and you start questioning lots of things. We have just recently been talking to Kasumba, and he says so many people are asking him to leave TV, and he's like, but where should I go?
Yeah.
You know.
I can imagine when people raise that question at Plot 1 in Tebe. Yeah? And the president was very unequivocal. I remember that press conference that visit, not necessarily a press conference, when Dennis Onyango retired from the national team and presented a memento to the president of Uganda. And by the time he said he was retiring, he was 36. And you could tell visibly from President Museveni's eyes that he did not understand what Onyango was. So he asked him, what are you going to do? You're very young, you're only 36. And the president did not understand that around 36 people start to retire. So he asked him, what are you going to do with your life? And Onyango had to tell him, I still play for my club, I have other passions, I have to also invest time in my children, raising them. He said, can't you do that while playing? Then eventually, of course, Dennis Onyango has since returned to the national side. Yeah. But it's in many spheres of life, by the way, it can be very, very difficult. That's why we are not in a situation where you can blame Mike Mutebi. You cannot blame KCCA. You cannot blame FUFA.
No.
You just have to know that this is a profound challenge. And the other week, Daily Monitor ran a story about a retirement crisis in Uganda. And for example, this financial year, over 3,000 Ugandans in civil service are going to retire. Do we even know where they are going to go? Yeah, so it's a very broad debate that even Second Take with IDK cannot exhaust. It's supposed to happen on many layers, on many spheres, in many societies. What happens when people start to say they are working? And in Mike Mutebi's case, he wasn't retired. He was thrown out. Yeah. He was thrown out of a club, he was sacked, and then he has to start a life. And it can be very difficult.
Okay, other people who have kind of been thrown out. Let's talk about Villa. The presidency is over, but those people who were thrown out of the race, what's happening with them? Or is everything all hunky-dory now? Is everything peaceful and quiet at Sports Club?
What's that word you use? Hunky-dory?
Hunky-dory.
What does that mean?
Is everything peaceful? I hope I'm using it in the right way. But at least one thing that should be peaceful is they beat UPPC, and I happened to watch that game on Saturday at the ground.
Yeah, I want to first start with the Villa president, then you bring in the what happened on the pitch. So there was supposed to be an election. People were invited to pick nomination papers and return them and then pay the 100 million. In the end, there is not going to be an election. Haji Omar Mandela was declared unopposed for the position for another 5 years. If you look at the Villa constitution and the rules, many provisions of that constitution have been broken. However, it's not a case of a crisis, because what do we football people or sports public want? We want Villa to be on the pitch, playing football and competing. And currently they are doing that. In addition, maybe we want also the players at Villa to be paid. And they are doing that. The challenge though is, if you understand the character of the man that Haji Omar Mandela is, there was never an opportunity that there was going to organize an election that invites everyone to stand and then we choose, and the kind of fallacy that democracy is, in many societies. So the gentlemen who are standing, Farouk Meiwa, eventually Ben Misagao pulled out, Kaumandeni Simbide, I think at this point they have to find a way either to work with Mandela or just become Villa fans. However, they are not doing that. I'm aware that Misaga and Meiwa, who have come together, have written over 5 letters to FUFA and they've not got a response. And I've said on this program before that FUFA has enough load to carry in regard to that for you to write a letter to FUFA telling them to stop the Villa electoral process, that's one. But that letter also goes further to say that they want FUFA to take over the running of Villa, the administration of Villa, which I think FUFA cannot do. They have enough on their plate already and wouldn't even serve anyone's purpose if they did that. Now, I know for a fact that they've also written to the National Council of Sports to step in. I bet NCS then will again go to FUFA and ask, what do we do with this case? Have you received this kind of thing? So it's very difficult. However, because I've looked at some of the provisions and they've been amended, they've been amended and they are not actually the provisions that were passed at the last Villa General Assembly several years ago. My fear is Ben Misaga and Farouk Meiwa, who are willing to fight, and I've had a chance to speak to both of them. I've spoken to Misaga more than once. I've had 2 lengthy phone calls with Farouk Meiwa. Is that they are almost inclined to go into the High Court. Oh. And if the High Court gets a chance and looks at those provisions, the entire electoral process might be cancelled. And then Villa is back into crisis. And for me, that would be the worst case scenario. Yeah, that would be the worst case scenario. So they need to sit down and I think find a way to work. I don't know where it is because I'm one of those who believes that conflict should be there to solve. You have to solve some kind of impasse. And after that is solved, it's, the club is supposed to be better. That's why I've said repeatedly that I think the task that Haj Omar Mandela faces at Villa now is that while he's investing money, he builds the club to help it transition into a sustainable model. Yeah. Because Villa has been in a situation where they depend on Omugaga Kawoya, Omugaga Kapo Mugabe, Omugaga Mandela. In the end, when that rich person goes away, Villa slides again. So it's about, for me, creating a sustainable model that will enable the club run for a lengthier period of time. So, Bugonga.
Yes. 2-0, I thought they started strong. They defended well. Of course, UPPC, I think, had not lost at home.
Yeah,
I think.
This season,
so it was quite disappointing for them despite, the home advantage. It was a good atmosphere, I thought. I love it.
There were so many,
anyway.
Because of the beaches or something?
No, just that I feel the air is better in Entebbe.
Yeah.
It's cleaner than Kampala air.
We did a show in Entebbe last week. I think you've seen it with Brandon. Yes. At the golf course. We are seated at hole number 13 of that Entebbe club, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah. We actually had an idea of going to Botanical Gardens, which I've known for a very long time being a property of Makerere University. I think the ownership has since changed. Way back, we used to have rally events at Botanical, but rally has that thing, cars have that thing, what's it called, the Moto X, that does a bit like a bullet, like a grenade. So I'm told, because of the closeness of the proximity of the Botanical Beach Gardens, where I used to watch our rally events on normally December 26th, and then Plot 1 in Entebbe, Plot 1 advised rally to take their things away because they would make a lot of noise, and the noise they make was not the most comforting. It can make a young person jump out of their bed. What about an old person? It could even be more scary. But more with the league, that result that you mentioned of Villa was only their first victory in 3 games because they had lost to Police and drawn with Express. And those games are both, I think, under investigation. Remember, the referees who are in charge of that game against Express have since been suspended. Villa scored what was a legitimate goal. Then they scored another legitimate goal against Police, where my friend William Oloya was a referee, and I think is also going to be sanctioned. So Villa were winning for the first time, and there's been talk of there being a conspiracy against Villa to prevent Villa from winning the league title, which conspiracy have not yet been sold into because I've not yet found a lot more facts, and I think I'm able to find facts in many ways, but I've not seen that. So because of that result against Entebbe, Uganda Printing and Publishing Corporation, Villa are moved to 41 points and they are 4th. but they're as many as 9 points behind the leaders, Vipers. Vipers now, on the pitch, let me raise something, because now they're on 50 points. Someone told me that Vipers have an opportunity to go the entire season unbeaten. And eventually, if they do, will be very controversial. Because remember, they've lost a game in the boardroom to Kitara by 3 goals. And they scored 3 points. Invisible -1, you could say. Because it's a team that has gone the entire season unbeaten in Uganda before. Villa in 1982. They went an entire league season unbeaten. Okay, the games were a lot less back then. But they're doing their business. One of the things I've liked from their previous 3 games, the one against Mbarara City, then the one they played against Calvary, and another one before that, they are scoring late goals when they've not played very well. They take the lead and then there's an equalizer and they score a winner. There was a case of Abdul Karim Watambala scoring against UPDF. And then before that, Yunus Sentamo scored their win against Mbarara City before Gusto Mulongo got their winning goal against Calvary. So they are showing a lot of fight, and they've almost come with what you describe as a siege mentality, because they think everyone else is playing against them, especially they think FUFA is playing against them because of that game against Chitara. So they are putting up their hand to win the title despite everyone else. But in addition, they only have a 4-point lead on Kitara. Kitara hosted Buhimba United States at the Hoima City Stadium, which was the first competitive game to be played at that venue. Remember, while there was a game between KCC and Kitara, when the stadium was being opened back in December, it was a friendly match. But this was the first competitive game, and George Senkaba and Livin Kabod scored a brace each as Kitara were able to beat Buhimba. I was mightily impressed by the crowd that Kitara managed to conjure up. People paid 10,000 shillings, first of all, to get in. Normally in that part of Uganda, a football game costs only 5,000 shillings. So for them to charge that high, I thought 10,000 was a lot. But they got the numbers in. Yeah, the stadium wasn't full, but still even the empty seats weren't that many. However, I've seen some videos of indisciplined people jumping over terraces. Never very, very good sign. But finally, the title race also might involve the team that is in third, that is KCCA. They are 45 points and they've won 5 games in a row. And they've recently beaten Express and Lugazi. That should be a very, very positive for a KCC side that has been under a lot of pressure, and there's been questions about Brian Senyond and Jackson Magay, the 2 coaches on that KCC bench that act as co-coaches. Now I think that has quietened a bit. And when you pick results, there won't be debate about whether you're good for the job or not. Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, someone who had a great weekend yesterday, this past weekend, is Lewis Hamilton. He had a podium finish with Formula One, though he was third. But he also won an Oscar at the Oscars for the movie. He's part executive producer. So we can add Oscar winning to his for best sound.
Let me look at that, because while I watch my movies, but I don't watch movies in the immediate. I love to watch my movies after they've happened.
Yes.
Yeah, I could even watch a movie that is 10 years old and enjoy it as much I would have enjoyed it in the immediate. But I didn't know about that.
Lewis Hamilton, Oscar winner.
Yeah, because I'd seen a preview of the Oscars, what is going to happen, but somehow my weekend descended into so many other things that I did not get an opportunity to watch them eventually. But the acting that we know Hamilton for is in that red car with a ranching horse. Of course, we've known him before that with the Silver Arrow, the Mercedes, where he was before he came to Ferrari. Very good result, I think, for Ferrari, and they are competing.
Yeah.
They are competing. I did not like how much the team let Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton race. Could have ended up in tragedy, and I thought they wasted their tires in competing against each other, and eventually let George Russell through because he overtook both. In the end, Mercedes were again
on the podium,
number 1 and 2. Kimi Antonelli winning for the very first time.
A great weekend to be a teenager.
Yeah.
He's 19?
He's 19, yeah.
Yeah.
And concerning there's Max Dorman.
Yeah,
who
16 and 74 days.
Yeah, who can move a mountain. You see how Arsenal fans think. Yeah, they have. You ask her for her numbers from CO2, yeah? From her chemistry class. She may not have the same kind of knowledge, but very good result for Mercedes. And the early signs are showing that Mercedes will be the champions. Because, for example, none of the McLarens finished the race. I've watched an interview of Max Verstappen. In the previous week, he claimed Formula One is almost dead because of the new regulations and all the new era. And now his car could not even finish because he suffered an electric problem. And he thinks there's so much that is not going his way, and there's so much that is not going for Formula One as an industry. But Mercedes are benefiting from it. Unfortunately, the war in the Gulf between US, Israel and Iran has caused the suspension of the two races, the one in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
I thought actually they were just cancelled. Then I've seen, there's given them new dates, I think in October and November, hoping that by then the war will be done.
The latest I've heard is actually because of the logistics involved. There was an option of having two races in Tokyo instead. But the latest I've heard is there's going to be a gap. There will be 22 races this year instead of 24.
Instead of 24.
And do you know how much money
Is lost. How much is that?
It's about 100 million pounds.
Is that for the Formula One organizers or to the economies that host?
I think altogether, Bahrain,
In
Saudi
Arabia.
Arabia. And I was just thinking, just two races, and they cannot, because I would imagine they would look at other venues in Europe, or like they say, have two races in Tokyo, because that's where they head, I think, next.
Next after China.
Yes, since
After
these two
Australia
have
and
been-
China,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's really sad. I must
The
say.
money is ridiculous. The amount of money, yeah, the amount of money that is going to be lost. And I can imagine people who live off Formula One and earn stimpeds for the work they do. It's even worse. Maybe the drivers are going to still pocket their $50 million at the end of the year, and the race engineers and all, but there's so many people around the industry who may not necessarily be earning that kind of money consistently, and they earn when the races happen. If you have hotel bookings, say in Bahrain and Saudi, if you have hotel bookings, let's say your hotel 100, and the war's already taken that out, then Formula One pays top dollar. Yeah, when they come and use your facilities, it's obscene what is going to be lost because someone thinks another has no right to run their democracy the way they should.
You know, and I was talking to someone who wanted to fly to Uganda, and they were saying that Emirates again has cancelled flights. They had opened a little bit, but they have cancelled again.
I saw their post on X
and
last
I'm like,
night. Yeah.
My goodness. Anyway, Isma, to why it should matter, let's talk about the Rugby Enterprise Cup.
So this week there is a Rugby Enterprise Cup. This is a competition.
It's more like a Kenyan thing, isn't it? It
Yeah,
feels
it
Kenyan.
started in Kenya. Uganda's tried to get involved before, but not succeeded it. So we tried a bit with the Bamburi Rugby Super Series, where we created teams, franchise teams from Chadondo and Legends at the time, and then they played against teams from Kenya. Now what has happened this time is that club sides in Kenya are going to be playing against club sides in Uganda. So what we've chosen is our best 4 teams against the best 4 teams in Kenya, and that competition will be at Wankurukuku to start.
Okay.
Yeah, the games will be happening at Wankurukuku. I just want to read out some of the fixtures because Ugandan sides, Pirates will be playing against KCB Rugby, while Heathens will be playing against Cabra Sugar, and both games will happen on March 21st at Wankurukuku. And then there's 2 Ugandan sides that will also be traveling to Nairobi. There's Buffaloes against Menengai Oilers, and then KCB Cobs will be playing against Nondescripts. I need to confirm this later game because I've seen somewhere that this game could actually happen in Nakuru, which would cut off a bit of the travel time. I imagine if the team is traveling there by bus. Now you know why we need that standard gauge railing.
Yeah.
Because it would be much easier and much cheaper for this team to get across the border and maybe in 4-5 hours than taking a bus ride that will take 10 hours. And then we'll start blaming the result on the fatigue from the bus journey. Yeah, but that is what is happening. So teams who are playing this week, but largely the focus is on that Enterprise tournament, Enterprise Cup tournament.
There was a huge finale, the Six Nations Rugby, over the weekend, and we have our Enterprise Cup that we're talking about. So why should we care about that huge finale? France have won it now back to back. Why should we care as Ugandans?
I love my sport, and sport, even if it happened in Tonga, I think I'd be very interested. But I've not watched something as spellbinding as that game in a very long time. France eventually winning it by just a mere 2 points. As many as what? 94 points scored on the day, because it ended 48-46 for France to win the Six Nations. They needed to win this final game for them to win the Six Nations. Then England, who have been utterly pathetic and shocking in the entire tournament, show up at the Stade de France and put up their best performance in years. And France had to dig very deep and eventually won that through a penalty, that Ramos. Now, why we should care? I think for sportsmen, the lessons you take out of sport are very universal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought the English played for a lot of their respect. The French showed a bit of their dirty side for them to be able to win, because France are known to play the fancy, beautiful, and all these good things about the game, but this time they chose to play in a different way. Two teams that the only way I would want to learn, for example, from the French, if I watch rugby, their video, when you watch their game, it should be used to teach teams how not to defend. That when you watch how the French play and you understand how they defend, then that's what you should not do when you're defending. Now, you should also watch them to understand how to attack. Yeah, the shade of two extremes, brilliant in attack, very poor in defense. And I thought it was I was on so much. I don't even support either, but the game was so compelling, and I was watching it in the midst of what was the game on Saturday at the same time? The
Arsenal?
last game, no, after the Arsenal game. West Ham against Man City, yeah, because they were happening at the same time. So I have my TV here and I have my laptop. So I'm watching both events at the same time. And I think I paid as much attention to France, England in the rugby as I did West Ham, Man City. Compelling stuff.
Okay. Now, last week we were at Lugogo. We shot from Lugogo and we could see the cricket team preparing. You said they're on their way to Namibia and they have a new coach. So why should we care?
We're talking about one of the greatest players to come out of this region, or to come out of a non-test playing nation. Steve Tikolo unveiled last Friday, and were there for his unveiling at the Entebbe Cricket Oval, the Lakeside Entebbe Cricket Oval, like it's called. So he was here for the unveiling, and as we speak, they've flown out to Namibia. Oh. They are going to be playing in a series where they will play 2 T20s and 3 ODI games, T20 internationals and 3 one-day internationals, in the hope that if Uganda build up very well, then they fight to get into ODI status. Now, if they do get into ODI status, one, they are guaranteed some big nations visit, not England and India, but the next Scotland, the next layer of teams, Nepal will be able to visit, and that guarantees them a lot more funding. So the contracts of the players that they have currently, and Uganda gives these players contracts where they earn a monthly salary to be a cricketer with the national team. You have a minimum, I think should be about 1.4 million shillings that they make out of this, or even more than that. I'm not very certain of the figures, but the last time when the contract first came, the figure was around that. So if they do well, they get ODI status. Then it also help them prepare for the T20 World Cup qualifiers. Remember, in October, they have to go to Nigeria to play in a qualifier. The first stage, then they go to the next stage, then there will be a third stage eventually for them to get back into the World Cup that will be happening in New Zealand and Australia in 2028. So very, very important that Steve Tikolo, who was hired, improves the team quite quickly for them to be able to get to that next stage.
Okay, but they have been at a World Cup before, so
yeah,
at least
2026.
It's not entirely new in the West Indies. So
they were there in 2024 in the USA and the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Okay, they called USA and the West Indies. Actually, so even someone who asked us about the West Indies.
Yeah, is it a country or something?
Yeah, it's a combination of 9 islands. And all these 9 islands, besides cricket, they all have their governments. There's a prime minister in Jamaica, there's a St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, but for cricket they come together. They are too small. There are nine different islands that come together to form the West Indies.
Okay, for cricket only.
For cricket
but
purposes.
when it's in other sports, they are all separate. Like
They
have.
Yeah, you will find a team from Antigua and Barbuda in the football.
Yeah.
And the
Even
politicians,
Jamaica,
and the way you know football, rather politics, the politicians cannot come together. I think the Jamaican prime minister is a lady, if I checked correctly, yeah. But they come together for the purpose of cricket.
Only cricket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for joining us this week. We are grateful for your time. Click, like, and subscribe. This is Second Take with IDK, and we are at the beautiful SKA Boutique Bed and Breakfast, where you can come and relax in the heart of Kampala. They also have a branch in Munyonyo where they give tailor-made service and wonderful food as well. Do take care of yourselves. We'll see you next week.
Are you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Nabingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College Nabingo Road. GMS Nabingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.